6 months after the battle at Haven's Edge, the galaxy looked completely different. President Kate Sullivan stood at the window of her office on Earth, watching construction ships work on humanity's newest space station. The massive structure was 10 times larger than anything the old council had ever built, and it served as the headquarters for the Alliance of Free Worlds. Kate was preparing for the most important speech of her life. In 1 hour, she would address representatives from 47 different species, all gathered to sign the Alliance Charter. The document would create a new form of galactic government based on cooperation instead of domination. "Madam President," said her aide, Colonel Ryan Brooks, "the delegates are ready for you." Kate nodded and walked toward the conference room. The Alliance Assembly was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of a single species ruling over others, every member world had an equal voice. Decisions were made by debate and voting, not by threats and force. As Kate entered the room, she saw faces that would have been unthinkable together just months ago. The Kepler Trade Federation sat next to former council colonies. Free Worlds Alliance members shared tables with species that had declared independence after the battle. Even some former council species had joined, choosing freedom over their old masters. "Friends and allies," Kate began, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. 6 months ago, most of our species had never spoken to each other as equals. We lived in a galaxy where one group decided the fate of all others. Today, we write a new chapter in galactic history. The delegates listened carefully. Many of them still could not believe how quickly everything had changed. The Galactic Council, which had ruled for thousands of years, now controlled less than a quarter of their former territory. Species after species had chosen independence over submission. "We did not want war," Kate continued. "Humanity offered friendship and cooperation to the Council. We were willing to share our discoveries and work together for mutual benefit. Instead, they demanded our surrender and threatened our people." Ambassador Jake Morrison, now Secretary of Interspecies Relations, stood up to address the Assembly. He had been at the peace talks where it all began, and his calm words to the Council had started the chain of events that changed the galaxy. "The old Council believed that strength came from controlling others," Jake said. "They thought that forcing people to obey made them powerful. They were wrong. Real strength comes from people choosing to work together because they want to, not because they have to." In the audience, President Malik Jones of the Free Worlds Alliance nodded his agreement. His people had suffered under council taxation and regulation for centuries. Now they were free to trade with whom they chose and make their own laws. Governor Sarah Martinez from Rigel raised her hand to speak. "President Sullivan, my world was one of the first to declare independence after Haven's Edge. Many of my people were afraid that breaking free from the Council would bring chaos and war. Instead, we have found prosperity and peace." Similar stories came from delegates across the room. Species that had been enemies under Council rule were now trading partners. Worlds that had been isolated were now connected by new trade routes. Technology and knowledge flowed freely between species that had never been allowed to talk to each other before. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy with the changes. The remaining Council worlds, led by Ambassador Kexthara and Admiral Vorth, were preparing for one last attempt to restore their old power. Jake activated the main display, which showed a star map of the galaxy. The image revealed the current situation with startling clarity. Blue areas marked Alliance territory and allied worlds. Green showed independent systems that were friendly to the Alliance. Red marked the shrinking area still under Council control. "The old Council still controls about 2,000 systems," Jake explained. "They have refused all offers of peaceful cooperation. Intelligence reports suggest they are massing their remaining fleets for a final attack on Alliance worlds." This news created worried murmurs among the delegates. Many of their species had small military forces that could not stand against a concentrated Council assault. President Kim of the Kepler Trade Federation voiced what many were thinking. Secretary Morrison, can the Alliance protect us if the Council attacks? Our worlds have chosen freedom, but we do not have the ships to defend ourselves. Kate smiled confidently. Ambassador Kim, let me be very clear about something. Any attack on an Alliance member is an attack on all Alliance members. That includes humanity. She gestured to Admiral Lisa Hayes, who had commanded the human fleet at Haven's Edge. Lisa stood and activated another display showing the current location of human naval forces. The Human Defense Force now has over 3,000 active warships, Lisa announced. We have built new bases throughout Alliance space and established patrol routes to protect trade. Any Council force that threatens Alliance worlds will face immediate response. The numbers were staggering. In just 6 months, humanity had revealed a military capability that dwarfed what anyone had imagined. New shipyards were producing vessels at an incredible rate, while human technology continued to advance beyond what other species thought possible. But the most important part of Kate's message was still to come. She activated the communication system that would broadcast her words to every world in the galaxy, including those still under Council rule. To any species still under Council control, I want you to know that you have a choice, Kate said, looking directly into the camera. The Alliance door is open to everyone. We offer the same terms to all: mutual respect, fair trade, and genuine cooperation. She paused, making sure her next words would be clearly understood everywhere. To the Council leadership, I say this: your time of ruling through fear is over. We offer you the same choice we offer everyone else. Join the Alliance as equals, follow our laws, and help build a better galaxy for all species. Admiral Vorth's face appeared on screens throughout the galaxy as he responded from his base on the Council world of Zenith Prime. His red skin was darker than usual, and his voice shook with rage. Humanity will pay for destroying the natural order of the galaxy, he snarled. The Council has ruled for 3,000 years. We will not surrender our authority to a species that has been in space for only 2 centuries. Kate looked at Vorth's image without fear. Admiral, you misunderstand the situation. We are not asking you to surrender your authority. We are telling you that your authority no longer exists. The species of the galaxy have chosen freedom, and we will defend their choice. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice becoming hard as steel. But understand this clearly. If you choose to attack Alliance worlds, you will not face 300 human ships like you did at Haven's Edge. You will face 3,000 ships, backed by the combined fleets of 47 free worlds. The transmission ended with an image that would become famous throughout the galaxy. The Alliance flag, showing the symbols of all member species arranged in a circle around a bright star, flew beside the flags of dozens of free worlds. Behind them, Earth's blue marble gleamed in the sunlight, peaceful but protected by the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Admiral Vorth cut his transmission, but not before viewers across the galaxy saw something in his eyes that had never been there before. Fear. The Council's final attempt at restoring their power would come 3 weeks later, when their remaining fleet attacked the Alliance world of New Geneva. The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes before the Council forces surrendered. Not a single Alliance ship was lost. After that defeat, the remaining Council worlds began switching sides one by one. Within a year, the Galactic Council existed only in history books. The Alliance of Free Worlds became the new standard for galactic civilization. Jake Morrison stood in the same conference room where the peace talks had failed, but now it was filled with Alliance representatives working on trade agreements and scientific cooperation. Through the windows, he could see ships from dozens of species docked at the station, their crews working together as equals. Amy Foster, now an Alliance diplomat herself, joined him at the window. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked. "Walking away from those peace talks, I mean." Jake smiled as he watched a human transport dock next to an alien cargo ship. their crews already planning joint missions to explore new worlds together. "Amy," he said, "sometimes the only way to make real peace is to refuse fake peace. The Council offered us slavery with nice words. We chose freedom with all its dangers." Outside the window, the stars shone on a galaxy where species worked together by choice, not force, where different worlds traded freely and shared knowledge openly, where no single group ruled over all others. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still problems to solve, still species that chose isolation over cooperation. But for the first time in galactic history, every world had the right to choose its own destiny among the stars. And at the heart of it all were the humans who had walked away from peace talks and taught the galaxy that real peace could only come from freedom, respect, and the courage to stand up to bullies no matter how big they seemed. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute before Zeth Kara began to make a sound that Jake's translator labeled as laughter. Soon, other aliens joined in. The Chronari made deep rumbling noises. The Zephyrians created musical trills. The chamber filled with alien amusement. "War," Quelnox said between clicking sounds. "This young species speaks of war as if they understand what the word means on a galactic scale." Zeth Kara stepped down from his platform and moved closer to Jake. Up close, the crystalline being towered over the human ambassador. Light pulsed through his body in what seemed like amusement. "Human Jake Morrison," Zeth Kara said, "perhaps you do not comprehend the scope of what you suggest. The Council commands fleets of thousands of ships. We possess weapons that can crack planets apart. Our armies have conquered entire star systems." Jake looked up at the alien without stepping back. "We understand perfectly. Do you? We offer you one final opportunity to reconsider," Quelnox announced. "Sign the accord. Accept our protection. Live in peace under our guidance." "No," Jake said simply. The laughter stopped. Several aliens made sounds that the translator marked as expressions of disbelief. "Then you have chosen extinction," Zeth Kara said. "So be it." Two large Chronari guards moved toward Jake and Lisa, but Zeth Kara raised a crystalline hand to stop them. "No. Let them remain as our guests until this foolishness ends. They should witness what happens to species that refuse council wisdom." Meanwhile, 26 light-years away, President Helen Carter stood before an emergency session of the United Nations. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the assembly hall. News cameras broadcast her words to billions of people around the world. "My fellow humans," President Carter began, "3 hours ago, our ambassador to the Galactic Council declared war on behalf of all humanity. I want every person on Earth to understand why this was necessary." She activated a holographic display that showed the alien accord in large text that everyone could read. These aliens did not come offering friendship or trade. They came with chains disguised as protection. They demanded we surrender our freedom, our resources, and our right to determine our own future. The assembly hall remained completely quiet as she continued. "Some of you may ask why we chose war instead of submission. The answer is simple. We are human. Throughout our history, when faced with the choice between freedom and slavery, we have always chosen to fight." General Peter Hayes sat in the Pentagon War Room, studying star charts and ship deployment schedules. Admiral Nina Wells stood beside him, pointing to various positions on the tactical display. "How many ships can we field?" General Hayes asked. 47 combat vessels, Admiral Wells replied. "The aliens are sending 50 ships as their initial response. They consider this a minor patrol force." "Weapons? Our ships are smaller and faster. We have advantages in maneuverability and electronic warfare, but their ships have heavier armor and bigger guns." Dr. Alex Turner entered the room carrying a stack of data tablets. "I have the analysis you requested on alien technology and biology." "What did you find?" General Hayes asked. Their technology is impressive but standardized. Every species uses similar designs and tactics. They have grown comfortable fighting enemies who think like they do. And we don't think like they do, Admiral Wells said with a slight smile. Exactly. They expect traditional formations and conventional strategies. They have no experience fighting an enemy that refuses to play by established rules. Back on Nexus Prime, Jake and Lisa had been moved to what the aliens called guest quarters. The rooms were comfortable but clearly designed to hold prisoners. Energy barriers covered the windows, and guards stood outside the doors. Jake sat at a small table, writing in a notebook with an old-fashioned pen. Lisa paced back and forth, checking the room for any possible escape routes or weaknesses in the alien security systems. "What are you writing?" Lisa asked. "A letter to my daughter," Jake replied. "In case we don't make it home." "We'll make it home," Lisa said firmly. "Earth won't abandon us." "I know. But if something happens to us, I want her to understand why we did this." A soft chime indicated someone was approaching their quarters. The door dissolved into particles of light, and 2 Zephyrian guards entered. Behind them walked War Commander Thetmar, the alien officer in charge of the fleet heading toward Earth. Thetmar looked like a giant blue eagle with 4 arms and intelligent yellow eyes. When he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that somehow managed to sound threatening. "Human ambassadors," Thetmar said. "I wanted to meet the species that believes it can fight the Galactic Council, and I wanted to meet the commander who thinks 50 ships will be enough to conquer Earth," Jake replied. Thetmar's feathers ruffled slightly. 50 ships is more than sufficient for a world with no military experience beyond your own solar system. "How many wars have you fought, War Commander?" Lisa asked. "I have led Council forces in 37 conflicts. I have never been defeated." "Against how many different species?" 15. "All of them using Council-approved tactics and weapons?" Thetmar hesitated before answering. "The Council has established the most effective methods of warfare through centuries of experience." Jake closed his notebook and looked up at the alien commander. "War Commander, may I tell you about a battle from Earth's history?" "If you wish." 300 Spartan warriors once held a mountain pass against an army of hundreds of thousands. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway because they refused to surrender their freedom. They held that pass for 3 days against impossible odds. "And then they died," Thetmar pointed out. "Yes, they died. But their sacrifice inspired their people to keep fighting. The larger army was eventually defeated because they underestimated the power of people who refused to give up." "Inspiring," Thetmar said sarcastically. "But inspiration does not stop plasma cannons or deflect energy beams." "You're right," Jake agreed. "But it does something much more dangerous. It makes people creative, desperate, willing to try things that others consider impossible." Thetmar stared at Jake for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. The guards followed, and the door reformed behind them. Lisa sat down across from Jake. "Do you think we got to him?" "Maybe. But it doesn't matter. He's already committed to this course of action. The question is whether Earth is ready." 6 hours. Later, the first alien ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. War Commander Thetmar stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the primitive world that had dared to challenge the Council. "Begin broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies," he ordered. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving a response from the humans. Put it on the main screen." Admiral Wells appeared on the view screen, standing on the bridge of the Earth ship Defiance. Behind her, human crew members worked at their stations with calm efficiency. "War Commander Thetmar," Admiral Wells said, "welcome to our neighborhood." "You shouldn't have come." The transmission ended, and Thetmar stared at the blank screen. Something about the human's tone made his feathers stand on end. She had not sounded afraid or desperate. She had sounded confident. "All ships," Thetmar commanded. "Prepare for battle." It seems these humans need a demonstration of council power. War Commander Thetmar arranged his 50 ships in the traditional council attack formation. The largest vessels formed the center, with smaller ships spread out in wings on both sides. This formation had won battles for over 1,000 years. Every species in the galaxy knew to fear it. Admiral Wells watched the alien ships approach on her tactical display. The formation was exactly what Earth's military analysts had predicted. The aliens were following their established patterns perfectly. All ships, this is Admiral Wells, she broadcast on the fleet frequency. Execute Plan Delta. Remember, we only get one chance to surprise them. Captain Roy Davis commanded the destroyer Lightning from his position on the bridge. His ship was one of 12 Earth vessels hiding behind the large asteroid Ceres. The human ships were powered down and drifting, invisible to alien sensors. Contact in 30 seconds, his tactical officer reported. All weapons ready? Davis asked. Missiles loaded and targeted. Railguns charged. Captain Beth Ford piloted her cruiser Thunder through the asteroid belt at high speed. Behind her flew 8 more Earth ships, using the rocks as cover while they moved into position. Her job was to hit the alien formation from the side, while Davis attacked from the front. Ford to Wells, she transmitted. Red Squadron in position. Wells to all ships. Begin attack in 5 seconds. Remember, speed and surprise are our only advantages. The alien fleet continued forward in their perfect formation, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. Thetmar studied the small group of human ships fleeing ahead of them. Only 12 vessels running away like scared animals. Pathetic, he muttered. This will be over in minutes. The first human missiles came from behind the asteroids. Davis had waited until the alien ships were almost on top of his position before launching. The missiles moved much faster than anything the aliens had seen before, and their targeting systems were designed specifically to penetrate alien shield technology. 3 alien ships exploded in the first salvo. 2 more lost power as electromagnetic. Pulse warheads fried their electrical systems. The perfect formation began to break apart as captains tried to respond to an attack from an unexpected direction. "Return fire!" Thetmar shouted. "Destroy those asteroids!" But the human ships were already moving. Earth vessels accelerated much faster than alien ships, and their pilots had trained for exactly this kind of combat. By the time the aliens targeted their hiding spots, the humans were gone. Ford's squadron hit the alien formation from the right side just as Davis launched his second wave of missiles. The aliens found themselves under attack from 2 directions at once, something their formation was not designed to handle. Captain Ford's ship Thunder fired its main railgun at point-blank range into the side of an alien cruiser. The metal projectile moved at such high speed that it punched completely through the enemy ship and hit another vessel behind it. Both aliens' ships spun out of control, leaking atmosphere and debris. "This is impossible," Thetmar's tactical officer reported. "Their ships are too fast. We cannot lock onto them." The human vessels darted between the larger alien ships like angry wasps attacking a giant. They fired their weapons and immediately changed direction, never staying in one place long enough for the aliens to target them effectively. Davis brought Lightning in close to the alien flagship, firing missiles at the engine sections. The alien ship was 10 times larger than his destroyer, but size meant nothing when the enemy could not hit back. "All ships, this is Davis. Focus fire on their command vessel. Take out their flagship, and the formation falls apart." 6 human ships converged on Thetmar's ship from different angles. The aliens tried to concentrate their fire, but the humans moved too quickly. Every time the alien gunners thought they had a target, the human ship was already somewhere else. Thetmar watched his fleet being destroyed piece by piece. These primitive humans were using tactics he had never seen before. They refused to fight the way they were supposed to fight. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the humans are jamming our coordination frequencies. Our ships cannot communicate with each other." Without communication, the alien formation completely fell apart. Each ship began fighting independently, which played perfectly into human strategy. The Earth vessels could now attack isolated targets instead of facing the entire fleet at once. Captain Ford led her squadron in a coordinated strike against 5 alien ships that had become separated from the main group. The human vessels surrounded the aliens and attacked from all sides simultaneously. Within minutes, all 5 enemy ships were either destroyed or disabled. "Ford to Wells," she reported. "Right flank is clear. Moving to support Davis." Admiral Wells watched the battle from her command ship, coordinating the overall strategy. The plan was working better than anyone had dared hope. The aliens were powerful, but they were also predictable. They had grown used to fighting enemies who followed the same rules they did. "All ships, prepare for final assault," Wells ordered. "Target their remaining command vessels." Davis brought Lightning in for one final attack on the alien flagship. Detmar's ship was badly damaged, with fires burning on multiple decks and half its weapons offline. But it was still dangerous. "Lightning to all ships," Davis broadcast. "I'm going to ram their flagship. Clear the area." "Negative, Lightning," Admiral Wells responded. "We need that ship intact for intelligence purposes." "Then what do you suggest?" "Disable their engines and wait for them to surrender." Davis smiled grimly. "Copy that, Admiral. Targeting their engine section now." Lightning fired its last missiles directly into the alien flagship's engine compartment. The explosion sent shockwaves through the massive ship, and its forward motion stopped completely. Detmar stood on his damaged bridge, surrounded by smoke and sparking electronics. Half his crew was injured, and his ship was powerless. Around him, the remains of his once proud fleet drifted helplessly in space. "Sir," his communications officer said weakly, "the humans are requesting our surrender." Detmar looked at the tactical display. 43 of his 50 ships were destroyed or disabled. 7 ships were fleeing back toward Council space. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. "Open a channel," Detmar said quietly. Admiral Wells appeared on his view screen, standing calmly on her undamaged bridge. "War Commander," she said, "do you wish to surrender?" Detmar stared at her for a long moment. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had been proven wrong in the span of 30 minutes. "We surrender," he said finally. Back on Nexus Prime, the news of the fleet's destruction reached the Galactic Council just as they were preparing for Jake's execution. The alien leaders sat in stunned silence as the reports came in. "Impossible," Quell Knox whispered. 50 ships cannot be defeated by 12 primitive vessels." Zeth Kara's crystalline form pulsed with confusion and anger. "Bring the human ambassador to the chamber immediately." Jake was escorted into the council chamber by guards who no longer seemed as confident as before. The aliens stared at him with expressions that his translator could not interpret. "Your fleet has been destroyed," Zeth Kara announced. "I know," Jake replied calmly. "How?" Jake looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each alien representative. "Because you made the same mistake that every bully in human history has made. You assumed that being bigger and stronger meant you would automatically win. You never considered that we might fight differently than you expected." The chamber fell silent again. But this time the silence felt different. It was not the silence of amusement or disbelief. It was the silence of fear. The emergency session of the Galactic Council lasted for 18 hours. Representatives from 12 species argued, threatened, and demanded action. The destruction of War Commander Detmar's fleet had shaken the foundation of everything they believed about galactic warfare. Zeth Kara stood before a holographic display showing the battle damage. 43 ships destroyed. 7 fled the battlefield. 0 human losses. This is unacceptable. High Magistrate Quell Knox clicked his mandibles in agitation. "The humans used dishonorable tactics. They hid among asteroids like cowards. They refused to fight in proper formation." "Honor does not matter," replied Supreme Admiral Krethak, the greatest military mind in Council history. The ancient Nethesian had remained silent throughout most of the debate, but now his metallic voice rang through the chamber. "Results matter. the humans won because they understood their enemy better than we understood them. The other council members turned to look at Krethak. His body was made of living metal that had darkened with age. He had commanded fleets for over 300 years and had never lost a battle. "You speak as if you admire these primitives," Zethkara said. "I respect any enemy who can destroy 50 ships with 12, Krethak replied. "That requires skill, planning, and tactical brilliance. These humans are not the simple species we assumed them to be." "Then what do you suggest?" Quelnox demanded. "Assemble the Judgment Fleet. 800 ships from 6-member civilizations. Enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. If the humans wish to fight, we will give them a war they cannot possibly win." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Carter met with her military advisors in the secure bunker beneath the White House. The celebration of their first victory had been brief. Intelligence reports showed a massive fleet being assembled in council space. "How many ships are they sending?" President Carter asked. 812 vessels, General Hayes reported. 6 different alien species contributing their most powerful warships. "This is the largest fleet assembled in council history." Admiral Wells studied the intelligence reports. "Our 47 ships cannot face those numbers in direct combat. We need a different strategy." Dr. Turner entered the room carrying a data tablet. "I have the analysis from the captured alien technology. The good news is that their equipment is standardized across species. The bad news is that it's much more advanced than ours." "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" President Carter asked. "The Judgment Fleet will reach Earth in 6 days, General Hayes said. "They're taking their time, probably trying to intimidate us. Then we have 6 days to prepare, President." Carter said, "General Hayes, implement Protocol Prometheus immediately." Protocol Prometheus was Earth's ultimate survival plan. Within hours of the President's order, massive ships began evacuating civilians from major cities. Hidden colonies on Mars, Europa, and other distant worlds received thousands of refugee families. Earth's population dropped from 8 billion to less than 1 billion in 4 days. Those who remained were either military personnel or volunteers who refused to leave their home world. Among them was engineer Sam Collins, who led teams of workers throughout the solar system. Their job was to convert ordinary objects into weapons of war. "How many platforms do we have ready?" Collins asked his assistant. 3,000 automated. Defense systems disguised as asteroids, space debris, and derelict satellites. Another 2,000 drone fighters hidden in the rings of Saturn. "What about the minefields?" "Every approach route to Earth is seeded with stealth mines. They look like natural space dust until activated." Back on Nexus Prime, Jake had become an unexpected celebrity among the alien population. Word of his declaration of war had spread throughout the station, and many beings wanted to see the human who had challenged the council. Jake used this attention to his advantage. He began telling stories of human military history to anyone who would listen. He spoke of ancient battles where small forces defeated large armies through clever tactics and determination. "Tell us about the Spartans again," requested a young Chronari worker. Jake sat in the station's common area, surrounded by dozens of aliens from different species. Even some of the guards had gathered to listen. 300 warriors held a narrow mountain pass against an army of hundreds of thousands, Jake began. They knew they would die, but they fought anyway because they believed in something more important than their own lives. "What could be more important than life?" asked a Zephyrian engineer. "Freedom," Jake replied simply. "The right to make your own choices. The right to live without bowing to anyone who claims to be your master." An elderly Vorthan scientist leaned forward. "But surely survival is more important than pride." "Is it?" Jake asked. "What kind of life is worth living if you spend it on your knees?" The Spartans died, but their sacrifice inspired their people to keep fighting. In the end, the larger army was defeated because they could not break the spirit of free people. Lisa stood nearby, watching the crowd's reaction. The aliens were beginning to understand something they had never considered before. There were things worth fighting for, even when you could not win. Supreme Admiral Krethak arrived at Nexus Prime 2 days before his fleet was scheduled to depart. He requested a private meeting with Jake, which surprised everyone, including the council leadership. The meeting took place in a secure conference room. Krethak sat across from Jake, his metallic features reflecting the room's lighting. "I have studied the reports from your first battle," Krethak said. "Your tactics were impressive." "Thank you," Jake replied. "I have also studied the history of human warfare. Your species has a remarkable talent for violence. We have a talent for survival. Violence is just one of the tools we use." Krethak leaned forward slightly. "I am curious about something. You must know that 800 ships will overwhelm your defenses. Why do you continue to resist?" Jake was quiet for a moment before answering. "Let me ask you a question, Admiral. In all your years of commanding fleets, have you ever fought for something you truly believed in?" "I fight for the Council, for order and stability in the galaxy. But do you believe in it, or do you fight because it's what you've always done?" Krethak did not answer immediately. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "I have fought 37 wars for the Council. I have conquered civilizations and imposed Council law on hundreds of worlds. I have never questioned whether those wars were necessary or just. And now? Now I meet a species that chooses death over submission, and I wonder if we have become the very thing we claim to protect the galaxy from." Jake nodded. "That's why we fight, Admiral. Not because we think we can win, but because someone has to stand up and say no. Someone has to remind the galaxy that freedom is worth defending." Krethak stood up to leave, but paused at the door. "When my fleet arrives at Earth, I will do my duty. But I want you to know that I will take no pleasure in it." After he left, Lisa sat down beside Jake. "Do you think we got through to him?" "Maybe, but it doesn't matter. He's still going to attack Earth with everything he has. Then we better make sure Earth is ready." On the 6th day, the Judgment Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. 812 ships arranged, themselves in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. It was the most powerful military force ever assembled in galactic history. Supreme Admiral Krethak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought, Sovereign. Before him lay the small blue world that had dared to challenge the Council. "Begin the final approach," he ordered. "All ships maintain formation. We will show these humans the true meaning of overwhelming force." But as his fleet moved deeper into the solar system, Krethak could not shake the feeling that he was sailing into a trap. The humans had surprised them once. What other surprises might they have prepared? The Judgment Fleet spread across the solar system like a plague of metal locusts. Supreme Admiral Krethak divided his forces into hunting groups, each one larger than the entire human fleet. His strategy was simple: find the fleeing human ships and destroy them one by one. Admiral Wells coordinated Earth's defense from a hidden command center inside one of Jupiter's moons. Around her, dozens of officers monitored the alien fleet's movements while managing thousands of automated defense systems. "Enemy forces are splitting up as predicted," reported Commander Lisa Brooks, who had escaped from Nexus Prime during the chaos following the first battle. "They're chasing our decoy ships toward the outer planets." "Excellent," Wells replied. "Begin Phase 1. Throughout the solar system, objects that had appeared to be ordinary space debris suddenly came to life. Asteroids revealed hidden weapon platforms. Derelict satellites activated powerful railguns. Even chunks of ice from the asteroid belt turned out to be disguised missile launchers. The first alien squadron to encounter these hidden defenses was completely unprepared. Captain Roy Davis led a small group of human ships past what looked like empty space near Mars. As soon as the alien ships followed, the empty space erupted with weapons fire. Contact, Davis reported over the comm. Automated defenses are engaging enemy Squadron 7. They're taking heavy losses. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Every asteroid could be a weapon. Every piece of space junk might hide a bomb. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a battlefield where they held every advantage. Supreme Admiral Krethak watched the reports flow in from his scattered squadrons. Ship after ship reported surprise attacks from hidden positions. His carefully planned formation was being torn apart by an enemy he could not see. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "Squadron 12 has lost contact. Squadron 4 is reporting heavy damage from automated weapons platforms." "How many hidden weapons do these humans have?" Krethak demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors cannot distinguish between real debris and disguised weapons until they activate." Captain Beth Ford led the main human fleet in a deadly game of hide and seek through Saturn's rings. The massive ice chunks provided perfect cover for her ships, while the alien vessels were too large to maneuver effectively in the confined space. "Ford to all ships," she transmitted. "Enemy Squadron 2 is entering the ring system. Prepare for ambush." The human ships waited silently among the ice, their engines powered down to avoid detection. When the alien squadron moved into the center of the rings, Ford's ships attacked from all directions at once. The battle was swift and decisive. The aliens could not bring their superior firepower to bear because they risked hitting their own ships. The humans darted between the ice chunks like sharks in a feeding frenzy, striking fast and disappearing before the aliens could respond. Dr. Turner watched the battle from Earth's orbital command station. His team had been analyzing alien technology for months, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. "The alien communication systems are centralized," he reported to Admiral Wells. "If we can disrupt their command frequencies, their ships will lose coordination." "Do it," Wells ordered. Within minutes, powerful jamming signals flooded the space around the alien fleet. Ships that had been working together suddenly found themselves isolated and unable to communicate with their commanders. The effect was immediate and devastating. Without central coordination, the alien squadrons began to stumble into each other. Some ships fired on their own allies by mistake. Others flew directly into human ambushes because they had no way to receive warnings. Supreme Admiral Krethak realized his fleet was being systematically destroyed. The humans were using tactics he had never encountered, fighting a type of war that made no sense, according to traditional galactic military doctrine. "All ships," he broadcast on emergency frequencies, "return to formation immediately. We are withdrawing to minimum safe distance." But it was too late. The human fleet had already moved to cut off the alien retreat routes. Captain Davis led a squadron that blocked the path back toward Council space, while Captain Ford's ships prevented the aliens from escaping toward the outer planets. Engineer Sam Collins watched from his position on one of the automated defense platforms. His teams had spent months preparing for this moment, and their hard work was paying off. "Initiating final phase," he reported to Admiral Wells. "All remaining platforms are converging on the alien flagship." The Sovereign found itself surrounded by hundreds of small, fast-moving objects that had seemed like harmless debris just moments before. Each one carried enough firepower to damage a capital ship. "Admiral," his weapons officer called out, "we have multiple target locks, thousands of incoming missiles." Krethak stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display fill with red warning symbols. His mighty dreadnought, which had seemed invincible just hours before, was now helpless against an enemy that refused to fight fairly. But the final surprise came from an unexpected direction. Jake Morrison's voice suddenly filled every ship in both fleets. "This is Ambassador Jake Morrison, broadcasting from the Galactic Council station. What you are witnessing is not just a battle between human and alien forces. You are watching the birth of a new kind of warfare." On Nexus Prime, Jake stood in the Council's communications center, having taken control during the confusion of the battle. Behind him, alien technicians worked under the supervision of human special forces who had infiltrated the station. For thousands of years, Jake continued, the Galactic Council has maintained peace through intimidation and superior force. They have crushed any species that dared to resist their rule. Today, that era ends. The broadcast was being transmitted to every world in Council space. Billions of beings watched as the mighty Judgment Fleet was systematically destroyed by a species they had been told was primitive and helpless. We offer the Galactic Council one final chance to negotiate, Jake announced. Withdraw your forces, recognize Earth's sovereignty, and we can discuss peace terms. Continue this war, and we will show the galaxy that the Council is not invincible. Supreme Admiral Krethak looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was injured, and his flagship was surrounded by enemy forces. Of his 812 ships, fewer than 100 remained operational. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, the humans are requesting our surrender. Admiral Wells appeared on the main view screen, standing calmly on her undamaged command ship. Admiral Krethak, she said, do you wish to continue this battle? Krethak stared at her for a long moment. Everything he had believed about warfare, about strength, about the natural order of the galaxy, had been proven wrong in a single day. We surrender, he said finally. The news of the Judgment Fleet's defeat reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. On hundreds of worlds, species that had been forced into submission by the Council began to whisper about the humans who had said no and made it stick. 3 days later, Jake Morrison sat across from the assembled Galactic Council, in the same chamber where he had declared war. But now the aliens no longer looked at him with amusement or contempt. They looked at him with something approaching respect. The Treaty of Terra Nova, Zethkara announced, placing a new document on the table between them. Full recognition of Earth's sovereignty, equal representation in the galactic community, no tribute requirements. Jake read through the treaty carefully. It was everything humanity had wanted and more. There is one additional clause, Quelnox added reluctantly. Several council member species have requested that Earth provide military advisors to help modernize their defense forces. Jake smiled. We would be happy to share our knowledge with any species that asks for it freely. As he signed the treaty, Jake thought about the path that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had faced a choice between freedom and slavery, and they had chosen to fight. They had been outnumbered, outgunned, and given no chance of victory, but they had won anyway because they had refused to accept defeat. The silence that had fallen when he declared war had been the silence of disbelief. Now, as he signed the peace treaty, the silence was one of respect. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as supplicants begging for protection, but as equals who had earned their place through courage and determination. And throughout Council space, other young species were beginning to learn the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had shown that even the mightiest empire could fall if enough people were willing to stand up and fight for their freedom. And in the depths of space, other voices were beginning to whisper the words that had changed everything. I formally declare war on the Galactic Council.